The movie starts with Driss, a man full of energy despite his boring life, finding himself in an interview for a nursing job one important day. The job involved taking care of a rich man named Philip, who couldn't move due to paralysis. But Driss had another reason for going to the interview. He only wanted to get a signature to prove he was there, which he needed to get government money. During the interview, things got tense as Driss and Philip argued, especially about music. And to make things more complicated, Driss flirted with Philip's assistant, Magali. At first, Philip wanted to reject Driss because he found him annoying. But eventually, Philip gave in because he felt sorry for him and promised to sign the papers the next day. As Driss was leaving Philip's house, he couldn't help but take one of the fancy eggs decorating the place. Returning to his crowded home, Driss found comfort in the familiar mess shared with his siblings. But his peace didn't last long as his mother was furious when she came back from work. She was mad because Driss had been gone for 6 months and still didn't have a job. She gave him an ultimatum. Either he leaves because he's unreliable and a burden, or he gets a job. The next day, Driss went back to Philip's fancy house to get his interview papers. But instead, he heard surprising stories from the head nurse, Yvonne. She told him how nurses often quit after just 2 weeks because of the tough 24-hour shifts, even though they got nice rooms and good food. Then, unexpectedly, Philip offered Driss a job for a trial month. With nothing else holding him back and his own mother kicking him out, Driss reluctantly agreed to work for Philip. On Driss's first day as a nurse, he made several mistakes. He fell asleep while massaging Philip and accidentally used shampoo instead of soap, which caused a hot water accident. He felt really uncomfortable when asked to do a personal cleaning task and refused because he found it disgusting. Luckily, another nurse took over, but Driss still had other tasks to do. The next day, when Driss was getting Philip ready to go to the art gallery, he didn't want to use the ambulance-like vehicle. Instead, he chose a fancier ride. They were both happy as they traveled in style. But when they got to the gallery, Driss didn't understand why Philip was so interested in an abstract painting. Philip surprised Driss by buying the artwork for a lot of money, 41,000 euros, showing just how wealthy he was. Soon after, one of Philip's friends warned him about Driss, telling him that Driss had recently been in prison for stealing and portraying him as a rude troublemaker. But Philip didn't take these accusations seriously. He was happy with how Driss was doing his job and even praised Driss for his unique way of entertaining. The next day, Driss found out about Philip's secret letters to a woman named Eleanor, which surprised him a lot. This made Driss very curious about Philip's relationship with Eleanor. Later, Driss saw Philip struggling with side effects from his medication, causing him to have a fever. Philip wanted some fresh air, so Driss took him outside, even though Driss was still sleepy. They went on a spontaneous tour of Paris before sunrise. During their walk, Driss offered Philip marijuana to help him feel better, which led to a conversation about Philip's relationship with Eleanor. Driss couldn't understand how Philip could be so close to someone despite his physical limitations. Philip explained that he could feel affection through his senses. Philip talked about his late wife, Alice, remembering how kind she was and how they were happily married for 25 years. But Philip was devastated when Alice died from complications after a miscarriage. He cherished their memories together, but he felt the saddest about Alice being gone forever. Philip told Driss that despite the expensive treatments, he was expected to live until he was 70 years old. After a sincere talk with Driss, Philip offered him a permanent job as his nurse because he was impressed with Driss's work during the trial period. But Philip also talked to Driss about his habit of taking things from his house, specifically asking for the return of a fancy egg. Driss pretended he didn't know where the egg was. The next day, Driss took his siblings to school as usual, but they had to make a stop at the police station because one of Driss's brothers got involved in a marijuana incident. Luckily, the younger brother, Adama, was let go because he was underage. When they got back to Philip's house, Driss saw Magali helping Philip write a poem for Eleanor. Driss made fun of the silly poem, but then he was surprised to learn that Philip had never actually met Eleanor, even though they'd been in a relationship for 6 months. Feeling frustrated about not knowing where they stand, Driss decided to take action. He called Eleanor and encouraged Philip to talk to her on the phone, even sending her his picture. During a night at the opera, Driss comforted Philip, telling him not to worry about his physical flaws, because modern women care more about wealth than perfection. Their friendship grew stronger each day, but they had a disagreement when Driss confronted Philip about his daughter being rude to him and the staff. Driss suggested disciplining Elisa, but Philip, feeling sorry for her, refused. This made Driss feel sad and alone. To find comfort, he went to his room and started painting abstract art, which he used to confuse him. Encouraged by Driss, Philip found the courage to talk to his daughter about being nicer to others. Although there was progress, Driss noticed a change in how he approached his nursing duties. It used to be serious and focused, but now it seemed more relaxed and enjoyable, almost like taking care of Philip was its own form of entertainment. As time passed, they grew closer, and Philip hinted at how he was tired of his family, always reminding him of his weakness, showing that he appreciated Driss's kinder approach. Plans were made for a big birthday celebration for Philip, including an orchestra. Meanwhile, Driss found Elisa crying alone in her room. Worried, Driss asked her what was wrong. Elisa told him she had just broken up with her boyfriend, Bastian, and asked Driss to help. At first, Driss was unsure about getting involved, but he agreed when Elisa offered him a lot of money. At the same time, Philip took the chance to show off Driss's abstract painting to his friends, and it sold for a good amount of 11,000 euros. Seeing Philip feeling down at his birthday party, Driss got everyone to dance, which cheered Philip up and made him genuinely happy. As the party ended, Driss gave Philip a letter from Eleanor. Philip was thrilled to read Eleanor's promise to visit Paris the next week and see the beautiful photos she sent. He was so excited that he couldn't sleep all night. The day Philip had been waiting for arrived, and he was getting ready to meet Eleanor with Ivan. Meanwhile, Driss worked on getting Elisa back together with her ex-boyfriend, Bastian. After succeeding, Driss went to see his mother at her workplace, but he felt too guilty to talk to her directly. He watched her from afar before leaving. Meanwhile, Philip was anxiously waiting for Eleanor to arrive, worrying that she might be disappointed to see him in his disabled state. Feeling overwhelmed with nerves, Philip thought about leaving, but then he accidentally bumped into Eleanor without realizing it was her. As time passed, Philip couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor. Eventually, he invited Driss on a private plane trip. During the flight, Philip gave Driss the 11,000 euros from selling the painting, praising his talent for abstract art. The next day, they went on a trip together, and their relationship changed from being just employer and employee to becoming close friends. When Driss came back home, he found his younger brother, Adama, who had been kicked out of the house by their mother for getting involved in a marijuana incident. Driss was annoyed by Adama's behavior and scolded him for always causing trouble. Later, Driss got a message from Philip, who wanted to talk about Driss's past and personal life. Driss told Philip that he was originally from Senegal and was adopted by his aunt when he was 8 years old, believing she was his mother. His real name was Bakari, but he kept it a secret. Adama, too, didn't have a father because Driss's aunt got pregnant with him out of wedlock after a late-night encounter. Learning about Driss's difficult past, Philip felt a mix of emotions. Despite Driss seeming happy on the outside, his life had been filled with sadness. Philip decided to end Driss's job as a nurse, telling him to focus on solving his personal problems before going back to work. Philip wanted to see Driss achieve more in life than just being a nurse. Even though it was hard to let Driss go, Philip did it for his friend's sake. As the morning arrived, sadness filled Philip's house as Driss prepared to leave. His presence had brought happiness to all the nurses. Sadly, they said goodbye as Driss and his brother, Adama, left Philip's house, planning to pick up their mother on the way. When they met their mother again, Driss and Adama apologized sincerely and helped her with her things. Despite being angry and kicking them out earlier, their mother forgave them easily. They walked home together, feeling united again. Meanwhile, Driss looked for a job as a courier, excited to start a new career. Meanwhile, Philip had a new nurse after Driss left, but this nurse didn't have Driss's cheerful personality. Philip became sadder and more withdrawn without Driss to cheer him up. As night came, Philip had trouble breathing and didn't want help from the nurse. Ivan realized that Philip needed Driss's special care, so she decided to contact him to make Philip feel better. The next day, Driss visited Philip's house to see how he was doing. Philip felt happy and a little sad when he saw Driss again. Driss teased Philip about his thick beard and mustache, bringing back memories for both of them. Later, Driss took Philip on a trip, driving fast until they got stopped by the police for speeding. Thinking quickly, Driss made up a story about Philip needing urgent medical help. Luckily, the police took them to the hospital instead of arresting them. After the police left, Driss took Philip to a quiet beach, where they could enjoy the peacefulness away from the busy city and appreciate the natural beauty that Philip missed while stuck in his fancy house. The next day, Driss took Philip out to lunch at a restaurant. But just as they sat down, Driss suddenly said he had to leave urgently because of some important things to do. Before he left, Driss gave Philip back the stolen egg from his house and hinted that a special visitor would come to see him soon. Then Driss left quickly, leaving Philip alone at the table. Philip was left wondering about Driss's mysterious words, feeling confused and nervous about who the visitor might be. Suddenly, a beautiful woman appeared. It was Eleanor. Philip didn't know that Driss had arranged for them to meet, knowing that Philip still had feelings for Eleanor. Watching from afar, Driss smiled contentedly, thinking of this meeting as his final gift to Philip, a way to show his friendship. So the moral of the story is when life hands you fancy eggs, make sure they're not the only thing you take from rich people's houses.